Allow me to tell you a story about how I, Kate Miller, was forced to sign divorce papers right on my hospital bed. Eleanor Sterling, my mother-in-law, had no idea that on New Year's Eve, she was personally signing her own death warrant for $20 million. One signature that left her entire family, the Sterlings, with nothing. That day, when they forced me to sign divorce papers in a hospital bed, barely having lost my child, they thought they had rid themselves of a burden. But they had no idea that this very signature activated a time bomb worth $20 million, which would explode precisely on the evening of December 31st, turning the entire Sterling family fortune into a pile of ashes at my feet. New York City, evening, December 31st. The sky sprinkled a fine, raw drizzle. The cold of the metropolitan pre-New Year's Eve didn't so much sting as it seeped into my bones, penetrating layers of clothing. I sat by the enormous window of a cafe on the second floor, with a view of bustling Midtown Manhattan. A cup of Earl Grey tea steamed on the table next to a thick folder of documents, sealed with a red wax stamp. I adjusted the collar of my beige cashmere coat and glanced at my watch. 5 p.m. Streams of people on the street hurried by. Everyone carried Christmas trees, bags of oranges, boxes of gifts. Their faces glowed with the anticipation of returning home. But this warm scene was disrupted by a chaotic spectacle right in front of the entrance to the five-star hotel across the street. On the wet pavement, under the icy wind, two familiar figures shivered. It was David and Eleanor Sterling. David, the man who had been my husband, the man who once proudly beat his chest, calling himself the heir to an old New York family, now looked pathetic in his crumpled, soaked jacket. He desperately tried to explain something to two massive hotel security guards, waving his hands frantically. And Eleanor Sterling, my domineering mother-in-law, who once hurled thunder and lightning, now cowered behind her son. Her elaborate hairstyle had turned into pitiful, matted strands clinging to her forehead, and her hands convulsively clutched a worn designer handbag. I took a sip of tea. Its astringent taste on my tongue gradually gave way to a sweet aftertaste. A polite waiter approached me, leaned down, and quietly informed me that my car was waiting at the back entrance. I nodded, smiled softly, and stood up. I stepped onto the balcony, exposing my face to the cold wind. From this vantage point, I clearly saw the despair in their eyes. The hotel security guards decisively waved their hands, pointing towards the roadway. David staggered backward, tripped on the curb, and nearly fell. And Eleanor Sterling swayed, seemingly weeping and whimpering. They had just been thrown out of their last refuge without money, without a home, and most importantly, without face with which they could appear in public. I remembered myself, as I was just over a month ago, also on a rainy, bone-chilling December day. Then, I staggered out of the Sterling family manor gates with empty hands and a broken soul. At that moment, Eleanor Sterling stood on the high porch and looked down at me with contempt, like a stray cat that needed to be thrown out. She said that a woman incapable of bearing an heir and preserving wealth deserved only to be on the street. Life, truly an ironic carousel. I picked up the folder of documents, running my finger over the line deed of trust and conveyance of real estate rights, just certified by a notary, in black and white. The new owner of the historic brownstone at number 18 inches Greenwich Village was I, Catherine Miller. I descended the stairs. The tap of my heels echoed rhythmically on the marble floor. As I exited onto the street, a gleaming black Mercedes pulled up to the entrance. The driver hastily opened an umbrella over me. The car's headlights swept across the sidewalk, hitting David and his mother directly in the face. They squinted from the bright light, then froze, recognizing me. David's mouth fell open, and he wanted to rush towards me, but a security guard stopped him. Eleanor Sterling stared at me. Her eyes seemed ready to pop out of their sockets, from a mixture of astonishment and hatred. I slightly lowered the car window just enough for them to see my flawlessly made-up face, my calm and regal expression. I said nothing, didn't even smirk. I just looked at them with a stillness like the surface of an autumn lake, the gaze of a person who had been through a storm and now contemplated the ashes. The car pulled away, leaving behind two swaying figures in the cold rain of the pre-New Year's Eve. In my soul, there was none of the tumultuous triumph I had once imagined. Instead, there was a quiet, poignant sadness. Sadness for the wasted years of youth, sadness for what was called marital duty, and sadness for the cruelty people are capable of for money. But this sadness was fleeting, like a gust of wind. I raised the window and leaned back into the soft leather seat. A new life awaited me. A life that I would sculpt and color myself, no longer depending on anyone. New York City. Late summer. After a downpour, it was still humid, but inside the deep, tunnel-like brownstone apartment in Greenwich Village, the air was always stale and heavy. This apartment was the pride of the Sterling family, with a facade facing the lively street where their antique gallery was located. But behind it lay a completely different world. My workshop was in the furthest part of the apartment, where sunlight rarely penetrated. It was a room about 160 square feet, permeated with the smells of chemical solvents, damp clay, and especially warmed herbal decoctions. An outsider, smelling this, would think someone was constantly ill in the house. But in reality, it was a secret method for creating artificial patinas on porcelain. I sat in a thick mask, holding a very fine brush, meticulously drawing every crack on an 18th century porcelain plate, broken into 3 pieces. This work required incredible patience and golden hands. I used a special adhesive mixed with marble powder to join the fragments. Then, using pigments made from herbs, I masked the seams, transforming them into natural cracks of time or crazing. The heavy oak door swung open, and heavy footsteps disturbed the silence. David entered. His face was red, and he reeked of alcohol, though it was only noon. He hurled a black plastic bag onto my workbench, making the desk lamp tremble. "It's ready. The client is already making a fuss. Why are you taking so long?" I frowned slightly but maintained a calm tone. "Be careful, David. The glue hasn't fully set yet. It will be ready by evening. Tell the client to wait a bit." David grunted, pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, and was about to light one. I hastily stopped him. "Don't smoke in here. There are flammable chemicals. Go outside." He glared at me with an incinerating look, but still reluctantly turned and left, muttering curses. David was like that, gallant and refined in public, discussing high art but crude and boorish at home. He knew only how to sell and to put on a show, while all the family heirlooms and miraculously restored rarities passed through my hands. I sighed, took off my mask, and wiped my brow. My head started aching again. For the past few days, I had felt tired, and my appetite was gone. I decided to ask my mother-in-law in the evening if I could go to the doctor. Going up to the living room, I saw Eleanor Sterling sitting at a massive carved table, counting money. Her horn-rimmed glasses had slid to the tip of her nose, and her fingers, moistened with saliva, deftly flicked crisp $100 bills. "Hello, Mother," I mumbled. Eleanor Sterling didn't lift her head, only grunting something in response. "Mother," I hesitated, clenching my hands. "I'm not feeling well. Could I have about $500 to buy vitamins and see a doctor?" Eleanor Sterling stopped and slowly raised her gaze to me over her glasses. Her eyes were sharp as a razor, and she scrutinized me from head to toe. "What did you say? Asking for money?" "Yes. I've been dizzy these past few days." Eleanor Sterling smirked and threw the stack of money onto the table with a slap. "Well, look at the lady. A delicate flower, a little work and already tired. This house feeds you 3 times a day, clothes you. You use light and water without limit. And now, at the slightest thing, you ask for money. Do you think money grows on trees?" I lowered my head, feeling a lump of humiliation rise in my throat. "But the plate I just restored, David said it would sell for $300,000. I'm only asking for $500. Eleanor Sterling slammed her fist on the table. Her voice hissed, "You wretched girl! You dare to bargain with me? That $300,000 is David's merit, his connections, his ability to find clients, and your scribbling isn't worth a dime. You came into this house without a dowry, without a profession. I gave you a craft. I gave you a roof over your head. That's happiness for you, for 7 generations to come. A freeloader, and demanding too." Her words were like needles piercing my pride. I was the chief restorer in this house. Without me, this pile of shards would be just trash. But in their eyes, I was just a free servant, a breathing money-making machine. At that moment, David entered from the courtyard. Seeing the tense atmosphere, he asked challengingly, "What's happening here?" "Your wife is demanding payment for her work," Eleanor Sterling wailed, exaggerating. "She says I'm exploiting her. Look, teach her some sense." David turned to me with an icy gaze. "Hysteria again?" Everything was fine. "I just asked for money for a doctor." I tried to hold back tears. "What doctor?" "You fantasizer. Go finish the plate. I'm picking it up tonight." Having said this, David turned and left, not caring whether I was alive or dead. Eleanor Sterling curled her lips into a contemptuous smirk, casually pulled out a $500 bill, and threw it on the floor at my feet. "Here, take it and go. And I don't want to see you again, or hear a single complaint from you." I froze, looking at the bill lying on the old parquet floor. Tears streamed from my eyes. I bent down and picked it up, not out of greed, but because I needed it. I needed to live. I needed to be healthy. And most importantly, I began to vaguely realize that my long suffering was feeding the demons in this house. Before that scene at the hotel, earlier that same day, I had an important meeting. I chose a quiet tea room in one of the side streets near Washington Square Park. This place was absolutely calm, separated from the pre-New Year's hustle. A faint aroma of sandalwood wafted in the air, and quiet meditative music played. Mr. Arthur Blackwood was already waiting for me there. He was a man in his 60s, thin but with an upright posture, with intelligent and discerning eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. He was a legend in the world of New York antique collectors, a man respected by everyone who wanted to enter this business. And he was also my old teacher, whom I deeply respected. Seeing me enter, he nodded slightly and pushed a cup of hot herbal tea towards me. "You're very punctual, Kate." "Hello, Mr. Blackwood. How are things?" I sat down and immediately got to the point. Mr. Blackwood sipped his tea. A mysterious smile flickered at the corners of his lips. "The trap is set. This morning, the bank, at the court's request, froze Eleanor Sterling's account. Of the $4 million advance we transferred to her, she had already withdrawn half to cover David's debts and buy all sorts of trinkets for show. Now she cannot return it." I nodded, feeling satisfaction spread through my chest. The plan was going exactly as scheduled, millimeter by millimeter. "Did they contact you? Did they ever?" "David has been calling my assistant off the hook since last night, and Eleanor rushed to the office this morning, crying, begging for a meeting to negotiate, but I told my staff to escort her out. I said a contract is a contract. Break it, pay the penalty. No money, property confiscation." Mr. Blackwood took a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. "These are the legal documents for debt collection. The brownstone in Greenwich Village and their antique gallery were mortgaged as security for the purchase agreement of that royal blue vase. Now, they have violated the clause regarding the personnel of the restorer custodian, which means they committed a serious breach of contract. You know what that means, don't you?" "It means they lose everything," I replied in an icy tone. That very vase was the key to everything. It was an intricate trap that Mr. Blackwood and I had meticulously prepared. In the eyes of the Sterling family, it was a priceless heirloom from the colonial era, a lifeline for their sinking economy. But in reality, it was a fake, created by my hands 3 years ago. In those sleepless nights in the workshop, I used kaolin clay, mixed with a small amount of bone meal, to achieve a special transparency and luster. I prepared the royal blue glaze with a secret recipe passed down from my great-grandfather, but I deliberately added a weak organic acid to it. This acid remained inert under the glaze layer, but upon contact with air and the high humidity of a New York winter for a sufficiently long time, it activated a process of internal crazing. Mr. Blackwood looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Kate, are you sure you want to go through with this? After all, they were your family." I placed the cup on the table. The sound of porcelain hitting wood was dry and sharp. "Family? Mr. Blackwood, you know perfectly well what they did to me. That night, if it hadn't been for our housekeeper calling an ambulance, I would have frozen to death on the floor. They killed not only my child, they killed everything human and kind in me." I took a deep breath to calm the rising anger. "Where is that vase now?" in the Sterling's safe. They guard it like the apple of their eye, not knowing that this apple is about to burst. Mr. Blackwood smirked. Today is December 31st, the last day for transfer. They desperately need your signature, confirming the vase's condition, to receive the remaining $16 million. Without your signature, they lose both the advance and pay a penalty, and lose the apartment. Exactly, Mr. Blackwood confirmed. And they are now in a panic, looking for you. What do you intend to do? I looked out the window at the tree branches, covered with frost. I will appear, but the price for my signature will be very high. I want back everything that belongs to me, and everything they owe me. Mr. Blackwood stared at me for a moment, then slapped his palm on the table. All right, I'll support you to the end. In this chess game, you are the queen, and I am merely the one who arranges the pieces. Show them what an heir to the Miller family is worth. I smiled a cold but resolute smile. Morning of December 31st. Time of ending and time of beginning. Sterling family, await. Memories of that night always returned in my nightmares, vivid and painful, as if everything had happened yesterday. It was a cold December night with icy rain. The northern wind howled through the window cracks, creating eerie sounds. David brought home a respectable man, introducing him as the CEO of a construction company who was looking for a gift for an important city official. They sat in the living room, drinking expensive scotch, and discussing feng shui and the eternal value of antiques. I was busy in the kitchen, preparing appetizers, when I heard David's loud voice. Don't worry, good sir. This is an authentic 18th century royal Worcester vase from the personal collection of Governor Schuyler. There are only 2 such pieces in all of America. One in the Metropolitan Museum, the other here. My heart constricted. I knew which vase he was talking about. It was a vase with floral garlands on a milky white background. But my God, it was a fake. I had made it myself 2 months ago, commissioned by a dealer from a flea market on 26th Street, but due to a small defect in the glaze during firing, David had kept it for interior decoration. How dared he sell it to a VIP client at the price of an original? I hastily wiped my hands and rushed into the living room. David reverently held the vase, illuminating the bottom with a flashlight to show the guests the fake hallmark I had engraved. David, I said, my voice trembling. David turned around. His eyes were red from alcohol. What is it? I have a guest. Women shouldn't interfere. Go to the kitchen. I need to talk to you. It's very urgent. The guest looked from me to David with doubt. David's face darkened. He placed the vase on the table and dragged me to the wooden staircase leading to the 2nd floor. Are you out of your mind? Do you want to ruin everything for me? He hissed through clenched teeth. You shouldn't sell that vase, I whispered, trying not to let the guest hear. It's a fake I made. It has a defect. If they send it for expert appraisal, you'll go to jail. This man clearly has powerful connections. Don't do anything foolish. Shut up, David's eyes flashed. I've already taken an advance, $100,000. I urgently need money to pay off my debts. If you utter a peep, I'll kill you. No, I won't let you do this. Fraud on a particularly large scale is a serious crime. Give him back the money. I grabbed David's sleeve, resolutely trying to stop him. Rage flared in his eyes. David, with his inflated ego and desperate situation due to gambling losses, saw me as an obstacle on his path to salvation. Let go. Have you completely lost it? David swung and forcefully hit me across the face. My vision blurred, and my ears rang from the blow. I stumbled and stepped back. You dared to hit me? I'll not only hit you. Be a good girl and shut your mouth. I still tried to rush into the living room to tell the buyer the truth. I couldn't allow my husband, scoundrel though he was, to go to jail, and I didn't want my conscience to torment me. David became furious. He grabbed me by my hair, pulling me back. In the chaotic struggle at the very edge of the staircase, he shoved me with all his might with both hands. I felt emptiness beneath my feet, tried to grab onto something, but only grasped air. Bam, bam, bam! I tumbled head over heels down the high oak staircase onto the cold, tiled floor of the 1st floor. A sharp, piercing pain shot through my back, and concentrated in my lower abdomen. I lay on the floor, sprawled, my eyes clouded. I tried to lift my head but couldn't. A warm, sticky fluid began to flow between my legs, soaking my dress blood. Bright red blood spread across the gray-green tiles. At the top of the stairs, David froze for a second. He looked at me, his face pale, but then the guest's voice came from the living room. "David, where are you? Are you finished? I need to leave." David looked at me, then towards the living room. A cruel choice flickered in his eyes. He turned away, straightened his jacket, and went to the guest, leaving me lying in a pool of blood, writhing in agonizing pain. "Save my baby," I gasped. Tears streamed from my eyes. Only our elderly housekeeper, Aunt Maria, rushed out of the kitchen. Seeing me, she screamed, "Oh God, Kate, blood, so much blood. Call an ambulance, call an ambulance." My consciousness began to fade. The last thing I remembered was the spinning ceiling and the sound of rain outside, cold and indifferent, like the hearts of the people in this house. The smell of antiseptic hitting my nose brought me back to reality. I opened my eyes and saw that I was lying in a dazzling white hospital room. My throat was dry, and my lower abdomen ached dully. I ran my hand over my stomach. It was empty. A horrifying feeling of emptiness enveloped me. I had lost my child. He was only 3 months old. I hadn't even had time to name him, hadn't had time to see him. The door to the ward opened. I hoped to see David, or at least a shadow of remorse on his face. But no. Eleanor Sterling entered. She was elegantly dressed, with a Hermes bag in her hands, but there were no emotions on her face. She pulled up a chair and sat next to my bed. Not a word about my health, not a word of comfort. She placed a sheet of paper on the small table. "You're awake. If you're awake, sign it." I glanced at the paper. A petition for divorce by mutual consent, and below it, a handwritten receipt. I, Catherine Miller, confirm that the accident that occurred on date happened due to my own carelessness, and I blame no one in it. I looked at her, disbelieving my eyes. "Mother, I just lost your grandchild." Eleanor Sterling curled her lips. Her voice was sharp as a razor. "Grandchild? Who knows if it was my grandchild? Anyway, it's unimportant now. What's important is that you shouldn't interfere with David. He has several major deals planned, and he doesn't need legal proceedings or rumors about him beating his wife." "What are you saying?" "He pushed me. He killed my child." I burst into tears. "Be quiet." Eleanor Sterling hissed softly but authoritatively. "Do you have proof?" "I had the cameras in the house erased. If you start screaming now, who will believe you? Everyone will say you're just clumsy and fell yourself." She pushed the divorce petition towards me. "Sign it. If you sign, our family will pay all hospital bills and give you an additional $50,000 for your recovery. If not, deal with it yourself. Our home will no longer shelter a nuisance like you." "I won't sign. You're beasts," I cried out, gathering all my weak strength. Eleanor Sterling stood up, looking at me with a mixture of pity and contempt. "You'd better be reasonable, Kate. By the way, that girl, Christina, David's girlfriend, is pregnant. A boy, already confirmed by ultrasound. Looks just like David. If you stay in this house, you'll only be an eyesore. Let us go, and everyone will be better off." This news was like a clap of thunder. Christina, that girl from the nightclub David frequented. So, they had been together for a long time, and now she was pregnant. My child died to make way for her child. Unbearable pain was replaced by a terrifying emptiness. I looked at Eleanor Sterling, at the divorce petition, then out the hospital window, where the bare branches of trees swayed in the winter wind. At that moment, the old me, the obedient and patient Kate, died along with my unborn child. From the ashes, the flame of revenge began to burn, cold and ruthless. "All right, I'll sign," I said in a dry, lifeless voice. Eleanor Sterling was surprised by such a quick change of mood, but immediately smiled smugly. "Now that's reasonable." I took the pen. My hand trembled, but the signature was firm and resolute. However, while Eleanor Sterling wasn't looking, I managed to secretly photograph the coerced receipt with my phone and record our entire conversation on a voice recorder. I handed her the papers. The hospital bills and 50,000, transfer to my card right now. And from this moment, everything between me and the Sterling family is over. Eleanor Sterling took the papers and lifted her chin. Be calm. Our family has enough loose change for you. She turned and left, without ever looking back. I lay down on the pillow and pulled the blanket over my head. In the darkness, I bit my lip until it bled to keep from bursting into tears. I swore to the spirit of my child that I would make them pay for every drop of blood, for every tear, pay a price that would be dearer than their own lives. My path of revenge began at that very moment. A week after my discharge, I moved out of the shabby rented apartment I had hastily found. I needed space to breathe, and more importantly, to meet the person who would help me turn the game around. The Hudson River waterfront. A windy day. The water was leaden gray, waves lazily lapping against the granite embankment. I chose a deserted cafe, hidden behind trees in a park. I sat there, having ordered hot chocolate, hugging the cup with both hands, seeking a little warmth. My body was still weak after the miscarriage and the fall, but my mind was clearer than ever. A clarity born of extreme pain. 15 minutes later, a black car pulled up to the cafe entrance. Mr. Arthur Blackwood entered. He wore a long coat and a felt hat. He looked like a gentleman from old New York photographs. He looked around and headed straight for my table. I stood to greet him. Hello, Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood gestured for me to sit. A shadow of sympathy flickered across his face when he saw my emaciated appearance. Sit down, Kate. You're just out of the hospital. Why aren't you resting? I no longer have time to rest, I replied in a hoarse but firm voice. I need your help. And in return, I will help you recover with interest that old debt of honor that hangs over the Sterling family. Mr. Blackwood frowned, ordered a pot of black tea, and turning to me, looked at me searchingly. You know about that story? I do. I looked him straight in the eyes. 10 years ago, David's father fraudulently sold you a fake colonial-era silver pitcher for a fortune. In professional circles, they laughed at you. You lost both your reputation and your money. You've been waiting all this time for an opportunity to teach the Sterlings a lesson, haven't you? Mr. Blackwood was silent for a moment, then laughed a dry, abrupt laugh that echoed through the quiet room. You're not simple, girl. I thought you only knew how to dig in clay. Yes, I hate the Sterlings to my bones, but old man Sterling died. Only Eleanor and that good-for-nothing David are left. They're barely hanging on. Why should I dirty my hands? They're breathing, but not dead. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. I want them to have nothing, to experience what betrayal is, what it's like to be thrown out onto the street like a stray dog. I have a plan, but I need you to play the role of a generous buyer. I began to outline my plan. I told him about the royal blue vase that I had secretly created 3 years ago during sleepless nights. It was such a perfect copy that I almost believed in its authenticity myself. I had hidden it in the warehouse, among defective items, under a layer of dust, waiting for its moment. I can turn it into a national treasure in their eyes. And I know how to turn it into a pile of shards at the most crucial moment, I said in an icy voice. Mr. Blackwood listened intently, his eyes gleaming behind his glasses. He was an experienced antiquarian. He understood the value of a sophisticated trap. So, you will plant a bomb in your own creation? Yes. I will use a delayed crazing technique. I will add a very weak organic acid, derived from the extract of a specific moss, to the glaze. After firing, it will remain inert under the glossy layer. But upon contact with moist air and bright light for a month, the acid will begin to destroy the glaze structure from within, creating radiating cracks. On the 50th day, the vase will crumble by itself, as if it had been broken without any external impact. Mr. Blackwood shuddered. He looked at me as if I were an unknown creature. Where did you learn this? From my great-grandfather's diary. He called it porcelain tears. Porcelain can weep too, Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood pondered. There was a risk, but the benefit of acquiring the Sterling's property and avenging the old offense was too great. Moreover, he saw in my eyes a raging flame of revenge. a flame capable of burning everything, including the one who carried the torch. All right, I'll play this game with you. Mr. Blackwood nodded resolutely. I'll send my man to David, but you must be sure of one thing. You'll have to return to that house. I know, I nodded, swallowing a bitter lump. I must return to activate the trap. I must restore the vase myself. Only then will they believe. The meeting ended as dusk began to fall. Mr. Blackwood left first. So as not to arouse suspicion, I remained alone, looking at the dark water of the river. I knew that the path ahead would be full of humiliations, because I would have to play the role of a foolish, loving wife in the face of the enemy. But for my lost child, I was ready to become a demon. The economic crisis swept through Greenwich Village like a hurricane. The Sterling and Sons Antique Gallery was emptier than ever. Tourists were gone, and savvy collectors knew David's fraudulent tricks too well and avoided him. Debts began to accumulate. David had run up huge debts with serious people, playing the stock market and placing bets. Now the interest grew exponentially, and every day, shaved-headed men in tracksuits loitered at the entrance to the house, subtly hinting at the consequences. Eleanor Sterling, accustomed to living lavishly, had spent all her cash. Only a pile of illiquid antiques remained. I sat in my rented apartment when I received a message from Mr. Blackwood. Our man is on his way. As expected, that same day, an expensive car pulled up in front of the Sterling's gallery. An elegantly dressed middle-aged man emerged, introducing himself as a representative of a large foreign investment fund that was looking for exclusive pieces of American art. This was Mr. Hayes, Mr. Blackwood's most trusted associate. I wasn't there, but thanks to a hidden camera I had installed during my subsequent return for the vase's restoration, I saw everything. David's eyes lit up like car headlights when he saw Mr. Hayes's gold-embossed business card. He nervously offered coffee, told the employees to bring out the best they had. Here, Mr. Hayes, this is a 19th century bronze sculpture, and this is an 18th century Chippendale chair, David rattled off. Mr. Hayes merely glanced at the items and shook his head with disappointment. This is all too trivial. My boss needs unique, museum-quality pieces. Money is not an issue. Authenticity and exclusivity are key. Eleanor Sterling, sitting nearby, froze when she heard the phrase "money is not an issue." She kicked David under the table. We have many valuable things in storage. Perhaps I should ask my son to bring them to you? Mr. Hayes sipped his coffee and slowly said, I heard that the Sterling family holds a unique Royal Worcester vase from the colonial era. My boss is very interested in it. If it is authentic, we are prepared to pay $20 million. $20 million. This figure exploded in the living room like a bomb. David dropped his lighter. Eleanor Sterling's eyes bulged, and she almost fell off her chair. Arshur, Ismate, Axes, H. Rhetoric, and all of it this give it, inaccessible, and has the stateless, and one, it's not comment, as est created, it's the 100 stime, and does day, 10, 8, s, inside 8, axapold, and to the daking s, dot sure, it's not made it intelligent, right but inspired it, at as a vester, end of the sting, at a time like, 8 here, right a ground, 1875, Exprance 1. Nanti 2025 Consus. Action writing. It's sense present. It's common to the stands. On the red. Intelpsis. Infida died. INDAT. And an addis disground. AP. In its tan. And as action. 80 entated I'm. Expenses. Actions. 8. Ander. 80. It's finded 22,000. And a plays it in time. It is a profit. Axable. Expland. APA. An exto, if you wanted, and any 500 ever presented. It is. 80 said. I was stand. As applied it. Arded. In the stand extra video. Any 5%. Inization tel fairy actions. Intech. Apted. And venced. INDAT. And an edis disground. It stayed 84. Annie 5. Massid. Lovin' with the present. In time and down. It is next time subscribe day. Actions. Thanks for watching. And pocketed. Enedit. Anda. 18 trekt. Informatis conted. Animeter. Inother hatter. It's condrictes. Expent. It's a little dact. Actually recce. It's menaced. Actisum. And how's it? I was see those. Text potted. If you witted botted. Telbit. Tixited down. There's not one it. Action of level proste. 8. 20 million it wasn't unthinkable sum. Enough to pay awful debts and live in luxury for theirest off their days. 20 million? David stammered, repeating the figure. In cash. If the item is authentic, we are ready to make an advance payment of $4 million right now, Mr. Hayes replied imperturbably, demonstrating the manners of a man accustomed to throwing money around. But the problem was that David and Eleanor Sterling knew perfectly well the condition of that vase. It was the same fake I had made 3 years ago, which David had rejected for not looking authentic enough and thrown into a storage room, where it was later dropped and a large piece was broken off the neck. Now it was just a useless pile of shards. David broke into a sweat. He looked pleadingly at his mother. Eleanor Sterling swallowed and, trying to maintain her composure, said, "This vase is indeed the main relic of our family, but it is currently in special storage in a safe, and it's not so easy to get it out." "No problem, mister," Hayes said, standing up. "I'll give you time to prepare. In a month I will return to inspect it. If it meets the rumors, the money will be transferred immediately. But remember, my boss is very demanding. The item must be in perfect condition, without a single flaw." Mr. Hayes left, leaving mother and son in a state of euphoria from the anticipation of money and panic from the impossibility of getting it. "Mom, what should we do?" "The vase is broken." David tore at his hair. Eleanor Sterling paced the room. Her face was wrinkled with intense thought. "Then we need to restore it. It's $20 million, son. Even selling this apartment, we won't get a third of that amount. We need to find a restorer, urgently. But who among outsiders could do it at such a level? And if it becomes known that it's a fake, we're finished," David objected. Both fell silent. They simultaneously thought of the same person, the only person with golden hands capable of turning fragments into treasures and knowing the secrets of creating antique glaze. "We need to bring Kate back," Eleanor Sterling said decisively. "Only she can do it. But we just kicked her out, forced a divorce. Will she want to come back?" David doubted. Eleanor Sterling smirked. A cunning glint shone in her eyes. "You know how to sweet talk. Persuade her. She loves you to distraction, and besides, she's sick and defenseless now. Promise her you'll take her back, that you'll forgive everything. She'll be overjoyed. And as soon as we get the money, we'll throw her out again. It's done." I sat before my computer monitor and heard their entire conspiracy. I chuckled bitterly. Just as Mr. Blackwood had said, greed would lead them into the trap. The fish had taken the bait. Time to reel it in. 3 days after Mr. Hayes's visit, David appeared at the doorstep of my rented apartment. He brought a wilted bouquet of roses, hastily bought at a gas station, and put on a mask of remorse, nauseatingly fake. I opened the door, feigning a mixture of surprise and fear, the role of a wife who had endured abuse but still harbored feelings. "David, what are you doing here?" David fell to his knees right in the hallway, grabbing my hand. "Kate, I was wrong. I'm such a scoundrel. All these days without you, I can't find peace. Mom is also very remorseful. She told me to take you home. Please forgive me." I pulled my hand away. My eyes filled with tears. "You killed my child. How dare you come here?" I know. There's no forgiveness for my actions, but, Kate, our family has big problems. If you don't help, Mom and I will perish. Do you want to see me in jail?" David began his pitiful lament, inventing all sorts of tragedies to appeal to my pity. I remained silent for a long time, pretending to be engaged in an agonizing internal struggle. Finally, I nodded almost imperceptibly. "I will return, but not for you, but to regain my dignity. I don't want people saying that my husband's family kicked me out." David was so overjoyed, as if he had won the lottery. He hastily drove me back to the brownstone apartment in Greenwich Village. Stepping across the threshold of the old house, I felt the same coldness. Eleanor Sterling greeted me with a strained smile. She told the housekeeper to clean my old workshop. Not a word of apology about the child, not a single question about my health. They were only interested in my hands. That same evening, David brought the vase shards to the workshop. "Look, can you save it?" "The client is giving $20 million. I took the shards, examining them under the lamp. "It's so badly broken. This is very difficult. Please try." "I'll do everything for you after this." "I swear I'll never hurt you again," David promised. I nodded. "I need a month, and during this month, no one should enter the workshop or disturb me. I need absolute concentration. Yes, yes, anything you want." The workshop door closed. I remained in my world, beginning the greatest performance of my life. I wasn't just gluing the vase. I was creating a delayed action bomb. I used a special adhesive, mixed with gold powder, to join the fragments. This Japanese kintsugi technique would give the vase even greater artistic value when viewed from the outside. But into the upper layer of glaze, I began to add poison. I took a tiny vial of clear liquid from my bag. It was the same organic acid I had prepared in advance. I mixed it with the glossy glaze and carefully coated the entire surface of the vase. Each brushstroke was a curse I sent to them. This one for my unborn child. This one for the slap and the fall down the stairs. This one for the cold divorce petition in the hospital. I worked like an obsessed person, forgetting about food and sleep. Eleanor Sterling sometimes peeked through the crack in the door, and seeing me diligently working, looked pleased. She brought me food, saying in a sickly sweet voice, "Work hard, darling. Finish, and Mommy will give you money for a spa." I took the plate, bowing my head low and mumbling words of gratitude, but contempt seethed in my soul. She was fattening the chicken before slaughter, but she didn't know that this chicken already had a sharpened knife. Exactly 28 days later, the vase was ready. It was magnificent, the deep blue of the cobalt, like the ocean, the gleaming glaze without a single flaw. No one could see the microscopic cracks that had already begun to secretly form beneath the surface. I called David. He looked at the vase, his eyes glazed over with delight. "My God, it's a masterpiece!" "You're a saint, Kate." He wanted to hug me, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me. I'm very tired." Yes, of course. "Rest, and I'll call the buyer. Let him come to accept the work." I watched David, who carried the vase upstairs with jubilation. The most difficult part of the performance was over. Now it was time to tighten the noose. The signing of the contract took place in the Sterling living room. Mr. Hayes arrived with a lawyer and 2 bodyguards. The atmosphere was solemn and tense. David and Eleanor Sterling, dressed impeccably, sat with obsequious expressions. The vase stood in a glass case in the middle of the table, gleaming under the chandelier light. Mr. Hayes put on white gloves and began to meticulously inspect the vase through a special magnifying glass. David's heart pounded. Sweat beaded on his forehead. I stood in the corner, arms crossed, with a falsely anxious expression on my face. After a 15-minute inspection, Mr. Hayes removed the magnifying glass and nodded. "Excellent quality. Natural crazing, an old shard, elegant painting. My boss will be very pleased." David exhaled with relief. Eleanor Sterling beamed, revealing her porcelain veneers. "I told you, we have only the best in all of New York." The lawyer took out a thick folder with the contract. "This is the purchase and sale agreement. Total value $20 million, an advance of $4 million immediately after signing. The remaining amount upon delivery of the item on December 31st. David grabbed the pen, ready to sign immediately. The money was already dancing before his eyes, but the lawyer stopped him. "One moment. We have one important additional condition. Please read clause number 8 carefully." David frowned and read aloud. Clause 8. To ensure the integrity and value of the item, the seller undertakes to provide continuous supervision at the storage location from the moment of signing the contract until the moment of its transfer, as well as to maintain the personnel performing the supervision in accordance with the composition declared to the buyer. The buyer accepts the item only upon presentation of an acceptance certificate, with a signature confirming the proper condition from the designated specialist custodian on the day of transfer. Any change of personnel, interruption of supervision, or absence of the specialist custodian during the specified period shall be considered a material breach of the contract. In this case, the seller is obliged to return the full amount of the advance and pay liquidated damages equal to double the amount of the advance. David looked up, puzzled. Why such complications? My wife is here. Where would she go? Mr. Hayes said in a strict tone, this is a mandatory requirement. We know that Miss Miller is a first-class restorer. Only she knows the condition of the vase thoroughly. We will not entrust anyone else to touch it. If you do not agree with this clause, we are forced to cancel the deal. Eleanor Sterling hastily intervened. Agreed. 2. Everything agreed. Kate is our daughter-in-law. Who else would sign? These are trifles. She elbowed David. He also nodded. Yes, I sign. My wife obeys me. He cast an imperious glance at me. I approached the table and, lowering my head, said, Yes, I will do everything as mother and my husband say. David signed the contract with a flourish. Eleanor Sterling placed her signature as a witness. Finally, I took the pen. The moment its tip touched the paper, I felt that I was signing a death sentence for their greed. The contract was concluded. The sound of a notification on the phone rang out. $4 million had been deposited into Eleanor Sterling's account. She grabbed her phone and began to kiss the screen. David shook Mr. Hayes's hand, laughing like a madman. They forgot that clause number 8 was handcuffs that had just snapped shut on their wrists. They were too confident that I was an obedient daughter-in-law, a loyal wife, a freeloader, who would not dare to leave this house. They did not know that I was only waiting for the right moment to unleash this trap on their heads. Mr. Hayes subtly winked at me and left. I smiled a rare, genuine smile for all those days. December 23rd. New York hummed with pre-New Year's hustle. People were buying gifts, trees, food for the holiday table. In the Sterling brownstone, a lavish dinner was also being prepared. Eleanor Sterling was in a wonderful mood. With $4 million in her pocket, she had already managed to pay off some debts, buy new clothes, and update the gallery's interior. I was busy in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. The housekeeper opened it and immediately ran back, breathless. Eleanor, some pregnant girl came for David. I froze. Christina. I went up to the living room. Christina was in a tight dress, emphasizing her large belly. Bright makeup, a strong trail of perfume that overpowered the scent of cedar from the antique furniture. David stood nearby, embarrassed, but not hiding his joy at the sight of her belly. Hello, Eleanor, Christina chirped. I'm Christina, David's girlfriend. I brought your heir to meet you. Eleanor Sterling's eyes lit up at the sight of the belly. More than anything in the world, she dreamed of a grandson, a continuation of the family line. I, the barren daughter-in-law, who had just lost my child, became completely superfluous at that moment. Oh my God, what joy. Come in, dear, come in. Eleanor Sterling carefully seated Christina on the sofa, on the very spot where I was never allowed to sit. I stood in the middle of the living room, like a statue, still holding a ladle. Mother, who is this? Eleanor Sterling turned sharply. The smile disappeared, replaced by her familiar cold, cruel expression. Why are you asking? Open your eyes. This is the mother of my grandson, the heir to the Sterling family. But I am still David's legal wife. Legal? David shrieked. You signed the divorce papers. I just haven't taken them to City Hall yet. Now our family will have happiness, an heir. Know your place and get out of here. I looked at David, then at Eleanor Sterling. Mother, David, are you seriously kicking me out right before New Year's? What about the contract? Did you forget clause number 8? Eleanor Sterling sneered contemptuously. Are you trying to scare me? The contract says your signature is needed on the day of transfer. There's still a week until the 31st. Get out of my sight. I'll call you on the 31st. You'll sign, and that's the end of it. We can even fake your signature in the supervision log, and we'll give you a few $100,000 for your service. You're ready for anything for money. I know you inside out. Exactly, Christina chimed in with a prim voice. You'd better leave, so our family can reunite. Your presence here stresses everyone. It's bad for my baby. David approached me, snatched the ladle from my hands, and threw it on the floor with a clang. You heard? Pack your things and leave immediately. Don't make me use force. They thought I was still the same weak, lovesick, and greedy Kate. They thought that if they beckoned, I would come running like a dog. Such arrogance. I looked into the face of each of them. I didn't cry. My tears had dried that night in the hospital. Fine, I'll go. But remember this day. You yourselves kicked me out. I went up to my room and packed a few clothes into an old suitcase. I didn't take anything valuable, only the ultrasound photo of my lost child. When I came downstairs with my suitcase, their entire family was already sitting at the table, laughing and chatting merrily. David was serving food to Christina, and Eleanor Sterling was affectionately stroking her belly. No one even glanced my way. I walked out the door. Outside, it was still raining icily. The wind beat against my face, but I wasn't cold. The fire of hatred burned in my soul. They themselves were inviting ruin into their home, unknowingly, and I was leaving to deliver the final decisive blow. The taxi I had called was already waiting. I turned back one last time to look at brownstone number 18 inches Greenwich Village. The heavy door slammed shut behind me, severing all ties, all feelings. Goodbye. See you on the day of your collapse, I whispered to the wind and got into the car, which dissolved into the white shroud of the New York snowfall. Clause number 8 was officially violated. The trap had sprung. December 28th. The New Year's spirit filled the streets of New York City. The scent of pine, tangerines, and festive baking wafted in the air. But in brownstone number 18 inches Greenwich Village, the atmosphere was heavy as lead. Eleanor Sterling sat at her carved table, exhaling clouds of vapor from her e-cigarette. Since she had kicked me out, she had rejoiced, thinking she had rid herself of a nuisance, and was about to receive the remaining $16 million. David sat, legs crossed, looking at new car models on his phone. Christina lounged on the sofa, eating pickles and watching a comedy series. Her loud laughter grated on the ears. Suddenly, a motorcycle screeched to a halt at the door. A courier in uniform entered, holding a thick envelope marked urgent and bearing a law firm's seal. Does Eleanor Sterling live here? This is a registered letter for you. Eleanor Sterling frowned and nodded to David to take it. David signed and immediately tore open the envelope. He pulled out a stack of papers and scanned the first lines. His face instantly changed. From rosy, it became pale, then ashen gray. His hands trembled so much that the paper rustled. What is it? Land documents, Eleanor Sterling asked impatiently. Mom, this is the end, David stammered, his voice hoarse. The buyer, Mr. Hayes, is suing us. Suing? For what? We received the advance. The item is here. Why sue? David swallowed and handed the paper to his mother, pointing to a line highlighted in bold. Based on Clause 8 of Purchase Agreement, Hashone KP, the buyer has determined that on December 23rd, the seller unilaterally terminated the right of residence and employment of the specialist restorer Catherine Miller. This action constitutes a gross breach of obligations regarding the supervision and storage of the item and the terms of the contract. Eleanor Sterling snatched the paper, put on her glasses, and devoured the text. The further she read, the wider her eyes bulged. In connection with the foregoing, the buyer declares termination of the agreement and demands from the seller the return of the advance in the amount of $4 million, as well as payment of liquidated damages in double the amount of the advance, which amounts to $8 million. The total amount due for payment is Shar, Adavidwid, Tacular, Intercatted, Enanitime, Tenger Y, Iwes, Extidently Benchus, Ac, It's doesn't nine, Ax about a vidi, Ask, in the down. Now, dated everyone, Arshasu, Diverstem, and Explicit 7, It's not ring, Experiented minus dances, 18 that, and helped, as det, expended video actions. In the Sex Poplove Live have, in 1480 rays, it's dated off it is, Donna Capsavis, and had of live, in des common, and here's dest, in taxed ire, it's 7 by a day, tendering make, and descried, Taknadated and tracted. Actually Atina. Anyway, it's the precious. Experient. Taxavidit. Rive is welled. Acher. Askaside. Action wick. It's a commons all day. Actional. After their way. It's Sutlev. Axid. Auction. And Inden. In 2525. At. And Tang's day. It's sevendication. 8-2. Obsoplation. And a day. In some port. In the rection rons, and the rext. Access. And tenanted his the spancing. It's taldated. Task, played. And played. 80 as opposite. It's tex. Interactions off. It's tan stand. It's not way. In action. In examples. In tour. Into actional slime. It's not nest. One of crace. Lined. Actual created. IMIT. Actually right. One timely 7. Eprate. It's das in a 9. Actioned unremoted. 8 most. It's Dow. 1860 opposen. Adian. Affinus. It's today action. And that's things ends of it lives. A tonight wanchin. Inter down. And helbet. Ac. And a day. Expect is not rated. 80. Effer 1. And this stecks today to 5 taken spas. IF. Activation. Activation day. And the factidatus. It's not of the trans. 8271. Vacuation of the ration. 1. I1. Integer palities intriactional baited. That's the connets fiver gnomes. And expected off of the world. 18 stain. Rebetter. 18. Tentra person. Is whited men. Axply zine. In the potatis very takes of odor. Inter the medic. Adder. Adder of the rest. I think things we're watching. 1-2 million within 2-4 hours. From the momento received off this notification. Eleanor Sterling let out a wailed scream. Dropping here cigarette. 12 million. Return $4 million, $8 million penalty. They've gone mad. That's not all, Mom. David pointed to the end of the document. We have already sent demands to the court and the bank for interim measures. All financial operations of Eleanor Sterling will be suspended until the dispute is resolved. As if to confirm his words, Eleanor Sterling's phone pinged. A message from the bank. Your account has been temporarily blocked by court order. Eleanor Sterling's legs gave way, and she collapsed onto the sofa. She had already spent $2 million of the advance on David's debts, purchases, and given it to Christina for her future. Now less than $2 million remained in the account. Where would she get $12 million to pay off the debt? Hearing this, Christina jumped up. There was no color in her face. What? My money? The gold we bought? Eleanor Sterling turned to her. Her eyes flashed fire. Money? What money? Shut up. You talked me into kicking out that bitch? I said we should have waited until the 31st. Hold on. You're the owner. You made the decision. Why are you blaming me? You were glowing with happiness when you kicked her out, Christina retorted. Christina, you dare to contradict me. David tore at his hair, pacing the room. Stop arguing. We need to do something. Call Kate. We need to get her back immediately. Only if she returns and signs that she was here all this time can we dispute this in court. Eleanor Sterling, like a drowning person clutching at a straw, grabbed her phone. Her trembling fingers dialed my number. She hoped, she prayed, that I, the same obedient daughter-in-law, would answer and save their family. But she was wrong. On the other end of the line, there were only long, cold rings, as cold and final as the way they had thrown my things out onto the street 5 days ago. I sat in a chic nail salon on 5th Avenue. Quiet music played, and the scent of lemongrass wafted in the air. The manicurist carefully worked on my nails, occasionally admiring their shape and saying, "Cherry red would look wonderful on you." My phone lay face down on the glass table in silent mode, but the screen kept lighting up, signaling a flurry of calls. I glanced at it. Ex-husband. 5 missed calls. Mother-in-law, 12 missed calls and a bunch of messages from unknown numbers, surely from Christina or their relatives, mobilized to find me. I took a sip of chamomile tea. The corners of my lips twitched into a smirk. I vividly imagined the chaos currently unfolding in their house. Eleanor Sterling was probably screaming. David was smashing dishes, and Christina was already plotting her escape routes. I picked up my phone and opened the messages, not out of interest, but to savor their fear. A message from David. "Kate, answer, I beg you. This is a matter of life and death for the whole family. Where are you? I'll come." A message from Eleanor Sterling. "Darling, I know, I was wrong. I said it in a fit of temper. Please come back, I'll set the table. I'll apologize. I'll do anything you want. Just come back and sign the paper." When I didn't answer, the tone changed. David. "Kate, don't you understand good intentions? Do you think you can hide all your life? If you don't come back, I'll report you to the police as a fraud." Eleanor Sterling. "Bitch, did you set the trap?" "Yes. If you don't come back, don't blame me for cruelty. I'll find your parents and make their lives hell." I laughed aloud. Threats. They still thought they were in a position of power. My parents had died long ago. I had no one left whom they could bother. The more they threatened, the clearer it became that they were in a dead end. The manicurist looked up at me in surprise. "Something funny?" "Oh, yes, I'm watching a comedy series. The actors are great, but the script is a bit weak." I texted Mr. Blackwood. "The fish is thrashing on the hook. They're flooding my phone." He immediately replied, "Don't pay attention. Today is their day of fear. Tomorrow is execution day." I turned off my phone and tossed it into my bag. I admired my freshly painted nails, bright cherry red, bold and regal. The color of blood, the color of rebirth, and the color of sweet revenge. Evening of December 28th. People rushed home, to their families, and I enjoyed my free solitude. I wasn't rushing. I would let them endure the longest night of their lives. A sleepless night in fear of losing everything and ending up in jail. My silence was the most sophisticated torture for them. December 29th. Greenwich Village was packed with people buying last-minute decorations and gifts. Amidst this hustle, a crowd of curious onlookers gathered in front of the Sterling and Sons Antique Gallery. News that the family was in trouble, their accounts frozen, and their property under arrest reached their creditors from the criminal underworld faster than vultures descend on a carcass. 3 black-tinted SUVs blocked the entrance. A group of shaved-headed men in leather jackets, bats in hand, burst inside. "Where's Ellie? Where's Davy? Come out." Their leader, a man with a scar across his face, roared. Inside, David and Eleanor Sterling cowered behind the counter. The metal grate on the door was halfway down, but the thugs easily broke it. Guys, calm down. After the holidays, I'll pay everything," David stammered, trembling. "After the holidays? I heard you're bankrupt. The bank seized everything. If I don't take the money now, what will I take? Break everything, boys." At the leader's command, his henchmen began to smash everything around them. The sounds of breaking porcelain and glass filled the gallery. Vases, plates, figurines, everything flew to the floor and shattered to pieces. Eleanor Sterling wailed, "Oh God, don't break it. These are antiques. This is all our money." "What antiques? No money, I'll take goods." One of the thugs tore an old grandfather clock off the wall and smashed it on the floor. The scene was horrifying. Christina, hiding on the second floor, seeing this from the window, grew cold with fear. She quickly scooped all the jewelry and cash from David's personal safe into her bag and slipped out through the back door. In such trouble, it was every man for himself. At the moment the thugs were about to break into the warehouse, sirens wailed loudly. A unit from the local NYPD arrived. "Stop! Everyone stay where you are!" Seeing the police, the thugs dropped their bats and began to pose as casual passers-by. It took considerable effort for the police to disperse the crowd and draw up a report. When everything quieted down, brownstone number 18 inches Greenwich Village resembled a battlefield. Eleanor Sterling sat on the floor among the shards, disheveled, crying silently. David sat, holding his head in his hands, in complete despair. "All is lost, Mom. The creditors said if $2 million isn't here tomorrow, they'll skin me alive, and Mr. Hayes demands $12 million. Where will we get nearly $15 million? Eleanor Sterling lifted her head. Her bloodshot eyes were empty. "There's only one way. Deliver the vase. If we deliver the vase, we'll get the remaining $16 million net from Mr. Hayes. With that money, we'll pay off the thugs and save our lives. But to get the money, Kate's signature is needed, David roared, and she vanished into thin air. Eleanor Sterling bit her lip until it bled. She rose with difficulty, grabbed her broken phone. Find her. We must find her. Hire a detective, track her phone, whatever it takes. Even if I have to crawl on my knees before her, I will do it. All night on December 29th, while the whole country prepared to celebrate New Year's, the Sterling home was plunged into darkness and fear. They ran to all their acquaintances, called everyone they could, to find me. Finally, in the early morning of December 30th, the private detective David had hired for a huge sum reported. Found her. She's at St. Patrick's Cathedral. David and Eleanor Sterling exchanged glances. A last spark of hope gleamed in their eyes. They rushed to the car and sped towards the cathedral, unaware that I was waiting for them there. On the morning of December 30th, St. Patrick's Cathedral was surprisingly quiet and peaceful. A light mist drifted over the garden, creating a magical atmosphere. I stood under an old willow tree, counting prayer beads and gazing at the water's surface. The silence was broken by hurried footsteps. David and Eleanor Sterling appeared. In a single night, they had aged 10 years. Eleanor Sterling no longer wore her luxurious fur coat. Her coat was stained, and her face was haggard. David was unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. Seeing me, Eleanor Sterling rushed towards me, not to scold, but to collapse on her knees at my feet. "Kate, I beg you, save our family." I stepped back, looking at her with an icy gaze. "You are mistaken. I am no longer a member of your family. We are divorced, and I was fired. I know, I was wrong. I'm the worst. You can hit me, scold me, anything. But Kate, the thugs are threatening to kill David. And Mr. Hayes is taking our house. If you don't sign the acceptance certificate, we will all perish," Eleanor Sterling said, hitting her forehead against the frozen ground. David also knelt beside his mother, clutching the hem of her coat. "Kate, forgive me. I know but remember the years we were together. Save me this one time." Christina ran away. She took all the money. I have only you left. I swear, I will fix everything. I will take care of you. I looked at the two people crawling at my feet and felt not a drop of pity, only disgust. Christina's escape was predictable. People like her come for the scent of money and fly away at the scent of trouble. "Take care of me," I sneered. "And what will you give me in return? Will my child come back to life? Will my honor return?" "The apartment. I'll give you the apartment," Eleanor Sterling cried out in desperation. "I'll sign over our brownstone in Greenwich Village to you. Just sign the certificate. Help us get $16 million to pay off the thugs. I'll give you all rights to the apartment." I raised an eyebrow. This was exactly what I had been waiting for. The brownstone in Greenwich Village was not just a valuable asset. It held my sweat and tears and was a witness to their crimes. I wanted to get it so I could kick them out onto the street, just as they had done to me. "Are you serious?" I asked, with a hint of doubt. "Absolutely. The documents, the deeds, all here. Let's go to the notary right now. As soon as you transfer it, you'll immediately sign the certificate for the vase. I swear to God." Eleanor Sterling pulled an old folder with documents from her blouse and, with trembling hands, handed it to me. She was ready to lose the house to save her son's life and preserve the last crumbs. According to her calculations, by losing the house but gaining $16 million, they could still start all over. But without my signature, they would lose everything: the house, the money, and David, possibly his life. I looked at the documents, then into Eleanor Sterling's eyes. "All right, I agree. But I warn you, I will only sign the certificate confirming the current condition of the vase and how you deal with them. That doesn't concern me. Yes, just sign that you, as a specialist, have been overseeing it all this time." "That's enough," David rejoiced. "Let's go. The notary is open until noon today. We can't lose a minute." I turned and walked away. A cruel smile played at the corners of my lips. They thought they were exchanging a house for $16 million. They didn't know they were exchanging a house for a useless piece of paper and complete collapse. The notary office at noon on December 31st was empty. But for a generous fee, which Eleanor Sterling paid through clenched teeth for the urgency, our documents were processed first. Mr. Hayes and his lawyer were already there at my request. The vase, which David had carefully brought in a shock-proof case, was solemnly placed on the table. The procedure for the apartment's deed transfer went quickly. Eleanor Sterling signed the papers and placed her fingerprints with tears in her eyes. She regretted it deeply, but the fear of the thugs was stronger than her greed. The notary stamped the seal. From that moment, the apartment officially belonged to me. I took the folder of documents and neatly placed it in my bag. The feeling of holding the fate of my enemies in my hands was heavy, yet thrilling. That's it, Kate. The apartment is yours. Now sign the certificate, Eleanor Sterling urged, glancing at the clock. It was already 11:30. Mr. Hayes pushed the expert report and acceptance certificate towards me. Please, Miss Miller, inspect the item one last time and confirm. I approached the vase. David hastily opened the case. Under the fluorescent lights, the vase still gleamed. Its cobalt painting was mesmerizing. I put on white gloves and touched its smooth, cool surface. But I felt that beneath this perfection, chemical bonds were breaking with every passing minute. The 1-month deadline was nearing its end. Well, is everything perfect? David asked nervously. Externally, yes, I answered briefly. Then sign faster, Eleanor Sterling urged. I took the fountain pen. The entire room held its breath. David and Eleanor Sterling looked at the tip of my pen as their only lifeline. Mr. Hayes maintained his composure, but his eyes showed anticipation of the finale. I placed the pen in the expert's conclusion field. I signed Catherine Miller. David exhaled with relief and reached for the certificate to hand it to Mr. Hayes and get the money. But I stopped him. Wait, I need to fully describe the condition of the item, as professional ethics require. Saying this, I added another line in neat, clear handwriting right below my signature. I confirm that the item is a high-quality replica, manufactured in 2021, and holds no antique value. I closed the pen with a click. The sound echoed piercingly in the dead silence. I pushed the certificate to Mr. Hayes. Done. The buyer may accept. David and Eleanor Sterling froze. They hadn't yet read what I had written and thought everything had gone smoothly. Excellent. Thank you, Kate. David smiled, turning to Mr. Hayes. Well, the expert has signed. Transfer the remaining $16 million, Mr. Hayes took the certificate and read the line I had written aloud to the entire room. His voice sounded like the strike of a judge's gavel. I confirm that the item is a high-quality replica. The smile slid from David's face. Eleanor Sterling froze, her eyes bulging, her mouth open, but she couldn't utter a sound. What? David stammered. What did you write? I wrote the truth. I took off my gloves and looked him in the face. This is the same fake I made 3 years ago. Did you forget? You asked me to confirm its condition. I confirmed. I am an expert. I cannot lie. You killed us, Eleanor Sterling wailed, lunging at me to tear the certificate. But 2 of Mr. Hayes's bodyguards quickly intercepted her. Mr. Hayes slammed his fist on the table. Fraud. You tried to sell us a fake for $20 million, and you even forced an expert to confirm it right before my eyes. You have no fear of the law. No, it's not like that. David waved his hands. My wife messed everything up. It's an original. Mr. Hayes coldly ordered his lawyer to immediately draw up a document for the termination of the deal, confiscation of all collateral, and transfer the case to the Economic Crimes Division. Outside the window, thunder crashed. For Eleanor and David Sterling, it was the sound heralding the end of their family line. They lost the house, which passed to me, and now lost their last hope of survival under the burden of enormous debts. I stood, adjusted my coat, and left the notary office. Behind me, screams, pleas, and, it seemed to me, the clanking of handcuffs. The game was over. Outside the notary office, heavy rain began. Cold drops pattered on the glass, but this cold was nothing compared to the storm raging inside. After my and Mr. Hayes's statements, A dead silence reigned before chaos erupted. David stared at the words I had written. His eyes were empty. He understood that this line was not just a confirmation of a fake, but a death sentence for his entire life. Eleanor Sterling was the first to recover. She let out a wild, animalistic wail, lunging at me. "I'll kill you! You cheated me. Give back the apartment." But before she could touch me, the bodyguards grabbed her. She thrashed in their hands, screaming. Her hairstyle was disheveled, and her makeup ran from tears, creating ugly streaks on her old face. Mr. Hayes stood up, straightened his suit, and said in an icy, authoritative voice, "Calm down. For attempted fraud on a particularly large scale, you can spend New Year's Eve in a temporary holding facility." These words acted like a bucket of cold water. Eleanor Sterling quieted, trembling all over. David collapsed into a chair, holding his head in his hands. "Mr. Hayes, we were wrong. Forgive us. We'll return the advance," he croaked. "Return it?" Mr. Hayes sneered. "With what? You've almost spent $4 million. The apartment now belongs to Miss Miller. What do you have left?" At his signal, the lawyer opened his briefcase. According to the contract, in case of a breach by the seller, the buyer has the right to confiscate all collateral, which includes all merchandise in your antique gallery, and the right to use the Sterling and Sons trademark. David snapped his head up. "No, you can't. That's our last means of livelihood. What will we live on?" "Those are your problems," Mr. Hayes replied mercilessly. "Right now, my people are sealing your gallery and warehouse. Where are the keys? Hand them over." David, with a trembling hand, took a bunch of keys from his pocket. He hesitated, but under the steel gaze of the bodyguards, he threw the keys onto the table. The sound of metal on glass echoed, like the crunch of their last hope. And at that moment, a quiet but distinct click came from the vase. All eyes turned to it. On the perfect cobalt glaze, a thin, cobweb-like crack appeared from the neck. Click, click, crackle! The sounds grew louder. Under the influence of the temperature change and the acid I had added, the glaze began to self-destruct. The vase became covered in a network of cracks, transforming from a masterpiece into a pile of useless shards. Eleanor Sterling watched this in horror. It's falling apart," she whispered, as if in a delirium. I looked at the vase calmly. "My creation and my instrument of retribution have fulfilled their mission. You see?" I said, clearly. "A fake will always remain a fake, just like the false splendor of your aristocratic family, behind which hides only rot and deceit." Today, that glaze cracked. I picked up my bag with the apartment documents, nodded to Mr. Hayes, and turned to leave. "Kate, wait!" David shouted after me. "You can't leave. You took my house. You threw me out. You're a cruel, evil woman." I stopped, but did not turn around. "Cruel? Compared to how you pushed me, killed my child, and your mother forced me to sign a divorce on my hospital bed. What I did today is still mercy. I merely took what belongs to me. This apartment is payment for my many years of work and for the life of my child." Having said this, I walked out the door. It was still raining outside, but my heart felt light. Behind me, the cries and curses faded. They were left with nothing. No home, no money, huge debts, and thugs pursuing them. The collapse of the Sterling family was complete and final. Leaving the notary office, I didn't go home, but took a taxi and asked the driver to simply drive me along the waterfronts. I needed time to calm my heartbeat. Suddenly, I clearly remembered David's grandfather, Arthur Sterling Sr. He was the only person in that family who treated me like his own. He had died 3 years ago, exactly the day I finished work on that fateful vase. I remembered how, one gloomy winter day, he had called me into his study, smelling of old books and cedar. "Kate, come here, my child." He sat in a wicker chair. His trembling hand rested on an old leather-bound book. "You've had it hard in our house," he said, looking at me with his worn, yet still wise eyes. "I know David is a rascal, and his mother is greedy. I'm afraid when I'm gone, there will be no one to protect you." I took his dry, wrinkled hand. "Don't talk like that, Grandpa. You'll be with us for a long time yet." He shook his head and smiled. "An old man is like a candle in the wind. I have something for you." He handed me that very book. These are the secrets of glaze mixing that have been passed down in our family. I recorded them my whole life. I didn't pass them to my son because he passed away early. And I won't pass them to Eleanor and David because they don't have pure hearts. In their hands, this knowledge will bring only evil. I pass them to you because you have golden hands and a bright soul. But remember my instruction. Porcelain cracks from fire, and a person from love. This craft is ungrateful. The beauty of crazing is born from the conflict between the body and the glaze. So too, in human life, only through pain and conflicts does one become stronger and more beautiful. I opened the book. On the last page, in red ink, a special recipe was written, self-destructing glaze. Grandpa, what is this? This is the last lesson, he said softly. If one day you can no longer tolerate injustice in this house, or if you see greedy people using the craft of our ancestors for evil, use this. It is a double-edged sword. It can create beauty that deceives the world, but it can also self-destruct to protect the truth. Remember, sometimes you have to break the vase to find a way out. At that time, I did not understand the full depth of his words. But after that night, when I lost my child, I understood everything. He had foreseen the true nature of his descendants and had given me a sword for self-defense. The vase was not just a trap. It was the fulfillment of Arthur Sterling Sr.'s will. I used his secret to teach his descendants a lesson about karma. The taxi stopped at Brownstone number 18 inches, Greenwich Village. The house was quiet, the doors closed. I took out the keys, a new set that I had ordered immediately after the documents were processed. The door opened. I walked in and turned on the light. Inside, there was a mess after yesterday's rampage, but this was my home. From a portrait on the wall, Arthur Sterling Sr. looked at me. He seemed to be smiling. I lit a candle before his portrait. Grandpa, I did as you instructed. I broke the vase to find a way out. Rest in peace, you and your unborn great-grandchild. Smoke from the candle rose in the quiet air. I felt a strange peace. The mystery had been revealed, and my mission, connected to the past, was completed. Night of December 31st, a magical moment of transition from the old year to the new. New York City was enveloped in a light mist, but a festive mood permeated the air. In Brownstone number 18 inches Greenwich Village, I had cleaned up all the chaos. I set a modest but festive New Year's table, a holiday roast, mashed potatoes, sparkling cider, and in a separate corner, on a small table, I placed a plate with apple crisp and lit a small candle. This was for my son. Baby, this is your first New Year's at home with Mommy. This house is ours now. No one will kick us out anymore, I whispered. And tears streamed down my cheeks, but these were tears of relief, not bitterness. Outside, from the direction of Central Park, fireworks boomed. Bright lights soared into the dark sky and burst into fiery flowers. I stood at the window, looking out at the street. Among the joyful crowd, I suddenly thought of David and Eleanor Sterling. Earlier in the day, an old acquaintance had called and told me she had seen them huddled under the Brooklyn Bridge, where the homeless usually gather. They dared not go to acquaintances or a hotel, fearing creditors. I vividly imagined the scene. Eleanor Sterling, once a domineering woman, now sharing space under the bridge with those she considered outcasts. David, spoiled, now experiencing the piercing cold and hunger of New Year's night. They had no roast, no sparkling cider, no roof over their heads, only fear and late repentance. I felt neither malice nor pity. My soul was calm. Karma is a just thing. What you sow, so shall you reap. The clock struck 12. I poured a glass of red wine and raised it. Happy New Year, Kate. To new freedom. I drained the glass. I closed the door, shutting out the cold and noise. In the warm, cedar-scented house, I wrapped myself in a soft blanket and fell into the most peaceful sleep I had had in the past year. A sleep without nightmares or fear. Tomorrow, when the sun rose, a completely new life would begin. On an early spring day, when the first truly warm sun bathed New York City, I officially opened my own ceramic workshop in Brownstone number 18 inches Greenwich Village. The old Sterling and Sons sign was taken down. In its place appeared a simple wooden plaque with the calligraphic inscription, Miller Ceramics. No more fakes, no more oppressive atmosphere. I exhibited my own original works and skillfully restored items. There were many guests. Mr. Arthur Blackwood arrived first with a huge bouquet of white orchids. "Congratulations, proprietor," he said. "By the way, I have a gift for you." He handed me a red envelope. "This is a contract. A major hotel chain wants to order all the dinnerware for its restaurants from you. I recommended you. They are delighted with your work." I took the envelope. My hands trembled with excitement. This was my chance. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Don't thank me. It's your talent. You earned it." At that moment, a modestly dressed woman entered the workshop. "Are you Catherine? They told me you have golden hands. My late mother's favorite cup broke. No one will restore it." She handed me the shards. I examined them. "I can do this. But it will take time. I will use the kintsugi technique. I will join the shards with gold to highlight its history. I will wait as long as it takes, just to preserve the memory of my mother." Looking into her hopeful eyes, I saw myself in the past. Love and memory that is true value, not imaginary millions. "Don't worry," I said. "It will be even more beautiful than it was." Brownstone number 18 inches Greenwich Village truly came alive. It ceased to be the grave of my youth and became fertile ground for my new dreams. I was reborn, like a phoenix from the ashes. One late spring morning, I sat in my workshop with a cup of jasmine tea. Before me on the table stood an antique Celadon plate, whose restoration I had just finished. Once shattered into smithereens, now its cracks were filled with lacquer and gold powder, and they gleamed like golden rivers on a jade field. This was the philosophy of kintsugi, which I had come to love with all my heart. Not to hide scars, but to make them a source of pride. Because only by having been broken can one truly appreciate wholeness. My phone chirped. A message from Mr. Blackwood. "Just heard. Dave arrested for drug possession, and Eleanor, after a mild stroke, was sent to a state-run nursing home. That's it, Kate." The end. I read the message, and not a single string stirred in my soul. Their fate was predetermined by their own choices. I no longer felt hatred or resentment. They remained in the past, which I had locked away. I put down my phone and ran my hand over the golden veins on the plate. My life was like this plate. I was broken, trampled. But in the darkest days, I found my own gold, resilience, self-respect, and a talent that no one could take from me. I used this gold to heal my life. The scars on my heart had healed and turned into golden patterns, reminding me of my worth. I was no longer the obedient daughter-in-law. I was Catherine, an artist, a strong and independent woman. Birds chirped outside. Spring was in full swing, and a new spring had also come into my life, bright and full of hope. I smiled and finished my tea, enjoying the sweet taste of freedom. "Thank you, Cracks. Only thanks to you did I learn how truly precious I am."